the drive. Tatum the finish. It is Banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with a You Got Boston episode live after the road trip. Or I guess not live because I'm actually pre-recording this one. But I'm in my hotel in Dallas. I'm leaving Dallas in a couple of hours here and heading to the airport. And this was a really fun road trip. I had a great time. Started in Golden State with a blowout win over the Warriors. Then we headed to LA for back-to-back games against the Clippers, an overtime win. One of my favorite games of the season because we got to see Jaden Springer put on a defensive masterclass. And then we saw the Celtics fall to the Lakers. And that was honestly kind of a lackluster game, not just the fact that they lost, but also just very low energy. So definitely not the trip highlight. And then to close things out with a win over the Dallas Mavericks last night, Saturday, in front of a really good crowd in American Airlines Center. Kind of a return to the NBA Finals and just a great game for a lot of players. One of those games where all the starters had it going and Derrick White really was the headliner from that one. And so another 3-1 road trip. Can't really complain when that's where you're at. The Celtics improved to 30, what's their new record? 32-14 on the season. So it's 3 games behind where they were at last year at this time. Really not too shabby. And another 3-1 road trip improves them to the best 17-6 on the road this season. So they've actually been pretty good on these West Coast road trips. This is the second one this month where they've won 3 or 4 games. Last month they dropped the one to Oklahoma City. That was a great game, but this one they lose to the Lakers. So both road trips, they won the first 2, lost game 3, won game 4. So followed kind of a similar pattern there. So I was at all 4 of these, and I wanted to just kind of chat a little bit about what I took away from these games. And then also I had like the best seats ever to the Dallas game. I have no idea why. I was looking for my seat, trying to figure out where I was labeled. Usually I walk around and I find my label with my name and SB Nation on it. And I would sit section 119. I was looking. I was like, "Where's I'm up in the stands, kind of in the loge near the concourse, looking for my seats." And then all of a sudden, I realized that my seats were actually literally in the first row, and that's why I couldn't find them because I couldn't anticipate that I would be seated there because I'm never seated there. And honestly, most NBA arenas don't even have a media section right behind the scorekeeper's table. So I was like, "Okay, this is going to be an awesome game, regardless of what happens, because I'm going to be able to hear everything and see everything." And I could literally hear players talking with one another and arguing with the referees and Joe Mazzulla, what he was saying. So I'm actually writing up, and I'll have that out soon, just like takeaways from that seat, because it just gave me a completely different vantage point than I normally do, but that I normally have. But in any case, I think if you're a Celtics fan, you have to feel pretty good about the team right now. I know people have been disappointed with the lack of consistency. It hasn't quite felt like, okay, this is the team that they know and love, and this is not like every single night they're coming out and blowing teams out of the water. But even so, despite that, I think that there's an element of they've been pretty good. And I know this most recent is a bit more inconsistent, but they've been pretty good. They're racking up enough wins to still have the 3rd best record in the league. And the Cavs have been faltering, so they're actually making a push for the number 1 seed. And I don't think anybody's worried. And I know what players tell the media is always going to be taken with a grain of salt because there's elements of like, maybe the players are just trying to not say the wrong thing, or, they're not going to let us in on what's really going on. So there's a lot of different pieces and components to it. I can just say, as someone who's around the team, I think this group is really, really comfortable, really, really confident. They know they haven't played their best yet. They know that they're not anywhere near where they can be. And despite that, it's not like this is a 500 team. It's not like this team is like the 6th seed. It's been, a month and a half of inconsistent basketball. And even then they've had some really good stretches and really good moments and really good victories. So I just want to say personally, I feel really good about where they're at. And I'm probably in the minority there a little bit. But I just think they're going to they're going to kind of hit the stretch where they're going to really rack up a bunch of wins and get to this place where all of a sudden we're like, okay, they've won, 9 of 11. I do think that's going to happen. Jaylen Brown said so yesterday. He's like, it's going to happen. Kristaps Porzingis said so as well. He's like, it's coming. It's happening. It's happening. So their confidence hasn't wavered. The personnel hasn't changed. Everybody's healthy right now. So I don't really feel like I have a reason to think that they're not going to be able to put together more inconsistent stretches. And I know people don't love hearing the excuses of like, oh, it's championship hangover, or it's just hard to be on 100 nights a year. But I think that it's also just the reality of life. Like the same way that on our jobs, we have off nights. I have podcasts where I'm like, I sucked and I couldn't keep my train of thought, or articles that are just below my standard. And it's like, I know I can make the article better. So why isn't it the best ever every single night? Because it's just not realistic. It's just not life. And I asked Steph Curry, in the first game of the road trip, after the game, I asked him about what people that aren't in the locker room in the NBA, aren't on a team, what they don't understand about being in an NBA locker room after winning a championship and what that experience is like. And it was really interesting what he had to say. He said, all summer teams are preparing to hunt you. They're preparing to figure out ways to beat you. They're studying film. And then you have to go in, and every single night teams they're getting up. They're so excited to play you. And I think we've been hearing that from the Celtics, but Steph's won 4 championships. So he's been in this position a number of times. He's gone back-to-back ones. That was with Kevin Durant, 2017, 2018. But he's 4 times been in this position where he knows what it's like to come off a championship. And to hear him say that, to hear Steve Kerr say, like, Steve Kerr said outright, if I was a Celtics fan, I would not be worried about this team. So to have that experience as well, I don't know. I just think, like, I get it. I get why fans are concerned. I get why, media has been hard on them. I understand, like, they're not playing up to standard consistently and night in and night out. But everybody that's in this field that has experienced this firsthand is basically telling us, like, this is kind of the way that it goes. It doesn't mean that I'm guaranteeing that they're gonna go back to back. Like, I think that that's really, really hard to do. Nobody's done it in 6 years. There's no reason to assume that this team is going to be able to get it done. That being said, I really do think that they're well positioned to do so still, despite the fact that since December, they haven't been the same team that they were in October and November. So I'll rattle off some observations just from last night's game. First, Derrick White's the story here. He's really been struggling. His shot attempts have gone down since Porzingis is rejoined the team. He actually said it. He was pretty candid yesterday, which I was a little bit surprised. This is exactly what he said when he was asked why his scoring dip has been down. He said, obviously, KP comes back. It kind of changes some things, but also I've shotted like crap. So those 2 points come together and you don't score very many points. So you just got to continue to do what I need to do to get prepared and just know that it's going to turn and try to make shots around when I'm wide open. That's just what I did today. So he blatantly said what KP coming back has changed the dynamic. And he doesn't need to say it because we all see it, right? But even so, I think that the fact that he feels comfortable saying that, like, it's the truth, right? It's where things are currently at. Porzingis talked about this as well. He said, it's so important that Derrick White is confident. He said we're a different beast when D White gets going. And so everybody's acknowledging it. Joe Mazzulla talked post-game about how important it is to empower Derrick, to make sure that he's aggressive. Jaylen Brown said he hasn't gotten the same amount of looks, or he hasn't been as confident recently. Today was a good sign. We got to keep building on that going forward. So there's no question on this team that this team is completely different when Derrick White is at his best. I would actually say he might be the most important player in that sense. Like last year when he wasn't in the lineup, those were the games that they were the most likely to lose. This season, the same is true, but also when he's struggling, it's really hard for this team to be the same team that they have been consistently over the past year and a half. And I think the backcourt, Derrick White finishes with 23 points last night. Drew Holiday finishes with 17. He had the most threes that he had in a game all season. He had 5 of 10 from 3. Like, that's what's going to get this team that's what makes this team impossible to beat, or really, really challenging to beat. It's not just Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown having good games. And so that's why during this most recent stretch, when they haven't quite been themselves, I have felt like, okay, we know that this team is, Jaylen and Jason are going to get theirs. They're multiple-time All-Stars. They're very consistent. They have lots of experience and accolades. The backcourt is the X factor. And I think when they're at their best, this team is the best team in the league. And when they're not at their best, they're not. And so it was super encouraging to see Derrick kind of come into his own. That third quarter was awesome. Front row seat to it. He had 16 points in the period. At one point, he had outscored the Mavs single-handedly. He had 16 and they had 14. The bench was just going crazy. You can just tell this is a guy that everybody loves. And so it was really cool. It was really cool to see that. You could just tell he was relieved. I think he's been wearing the frustration of his offensive struggles on his face. And so that's the big story from last night, I would say. Obviously, different games on this trip have had different stories. Jaden Springer was the story from the Clippers game. We talked about that on the CLNS Postgame show, but I'm a huge fan of his. I just love the way he plays defense. And I really do wish that the current NBA allowed for there to be more non-shooting guards. And I'm not even sure that he's a non-shooting guard. Like, he's been improving his shot, but I just think the gift that he has in the defensive end, it should be enough to keep you out there. It's just today's NBA, it's just not. So we'll see if he gets more run, but he's been really, really, really fun to watch, and that was an awesome performance. Something else to note from last night's game, Porzingis, returned to Dallas for the first time. That was his first time playing in American Airlines Center since he was traded to the Wizards in 22. And I was kind of surprised when I realized that. There was some boos, but overall, there were also clearly a lot of people that loved him there, from staff members, workers, just people kind of in and around the organization and the arena. He was chatting it up the whole time. He said it was really nice to be back. He says he has some great relationships with many people. I miss a lot of these nice people. It's always good to come back. And Porzingis has been looking great. I mean, he really has. This month, he's shooting 47.3% from three. So this is he's the best three-point on the team this month. And just consistently, he's averaging 19.5 points per game. He's not had any injury issues or anything like that in a couple of weeks now. So it's been pretty remarkable to me just to see, since the Rockets game and the previous road trip, the only game that he missed was against the Clippers on the first night of a back-to-back. He hasn't had any injuries. I know it's only a couple of weeks, but that's the longest stretch that he's gone in quite some time. And I asked him post-game, where are you at? He's been giving us percentages of where he's at. I think he said 80% a couple weeks ago. Last night, he said 92.7%. So he said his rhythm is back. Physically, he's still not perfect. And that's just a matter of his wind. Obviously, he's not going to be in position to be in 100% good shape when literally a month ago he was seated. And he didn't have a normal offseason or any of that, but he's working towards that. And I know people, I've got this question a couple of times. I know people are concerned that it's not quite the same Porzingis, that we are, we're not seeing the same returns. They're a +1 net rating with him in the lineup, whereas last year they were a +11. I think this is one of those examples of correlation rather than causation. I don't think that him being back is why they're struggling. I think they happen to be struggling, and he happens to be back in the lineup. That being said, you don't want to see his shots and his attempts come at the expense of now Derrick White's not involved in the offense. And so that's the only thing I can think of that would be a legitimate reason why they're worse off right now. I don't think they're actually worse off, but I think that there is an adjustment period when he's rejoining the team to make sure that he is finding a good rhythm and he's comfortable. The Derrick's finding a good rhythm, the Derrick's comfortable, and Drew as well. And then it's not they're just throwing it down to him in the post and trying to hunt mismatches the whole game and nobody else has a rhythm. You could say that about a guy going for 50 on a given night. It still potentially hurts their teammates if they don't find a rhythm for the whole group. And we've seen that in games where Jaylen Brown goes off for 15 in the first quarter and it's they're actually losing at halftime because nobody else got their feet under them. So another bright spot, though, from the strip. He was really consistent. He's probably the most consistent player over these past few games. So just good to see after he dealt with when he first came back from that ankle injury, from the ankle surgery, he had so many different things that he was dealing with: foot strains, ankle sprains. So I was starting to worry that he wasn't going to be able to string together some consistent performances, but ultimately he was, in fact, able to do so. And this has been a really, really good month for him. 19.5 points per game, 49.1% shooting. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. PrizePicks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct in at least one or more stats production, you can win real cash. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. I'll also mention, just in general, we talked about the bouncing back thing. There was a really funny moment last night. There was a quote on the board. Let me actually find the exact quote because this was pretty funny. There's a quote in the locker room that's attributed to Jaylen Brown. Let me find it. So it says, "We want to make sure we come together and look each other in the eye and put our best foot forward. You see a lot of teams that won't do that." Jaylen Brown. And then someone asked Jaylen about that quote and was like, oh, when did you put that up there? And he was like, I didn't write that. I don't even think I said that, but whatever it takes to inspire these guys is fine for me. So that was pretty funny. And I asked him, what has given him this confidence that despite the fact they've had some really bad losses, he's just like so even killed this year. And so is Porzingis. So honestly, they kind of all have been. But Jaylen's the one that in years past, he'd be like, this is unacceptable, like kind of calling out the team via the media. And this season, it's just like he's not concerned. And I think for some people, it's frustrating because they want to see him get riled up. They want to see the guys say this is unacceptable to kind of affirm like what they're feeling from watching this team play. So I asked him, what has given you the confidence to stay so calm and steady after these tough losses? And he said, this is a great quote. So I'll read it in full. Just life. One of my favorite quotes is, winter always turns to spring, no matter what. So when things are not going your way, just stay the course. The tide will turn. We've had enough experience to know what that looks like, so can't complain when it's not going your way. You just got to have more detail, be more focused, embrace it, and then get ready for it to switch the flip. So I think he meant flip the switch, but that's what he said. So I think part of it is the championship. It's the fact that this group was won together. They don't want to point to it too much because ultimately, like, that's not that year's in the past, but like last year, Jaylen was not like this, and this year he is. And so I do think there's an element of it that's like a result of the championship and just him feeling just like a lot of faith in this group and himself and his team and the process, in the adversity, all that. And then Porzingis was really enlightening. He's like the best quote on the team. He really is so candid and open with the media. He said, we're definitely working toward getting our killer instinct back. We want to have that. Some moments we've looked really good, some moments not so good, some moments we've cruised a little bit. It's kind of been a mix of everything. I think it's important for us to keep adding to what we have in these kinds of games, to keep adding, to keep making steps forward, to keep pushing each other, keep holding each other accountable. We have great support around us, the coaching staff and everybody. Just have to keep making steps forward as a team. I think it's happening. Just patience and not overreacting to every little bump on the road. So that's been the key for this team. And I think it's frustrated people at points because everybody wants to see consistency, and I do think they need to go on a little bit of a win streak here, especially heading into All-Star break. But they're not getting rattled after these losses, and they know that they're not at their best. He said, we're working on getting our killer instinct back. Like, that's not great to hear. Like, you want to have your killer instinct as a team. That's how you win basketball games. It's why they've been getting outscored routinely in fourth quarters, because I think they're letting their foot off the gas a little bit. But that's a lot better than saying there's an issue in the locker room. It's a lot better than saying, there's a major injury or guys are just not able to play as well as they did previously. Like, I think it's a mindset thing. And I thought that this team might be immune to it because they have some really kind of competitive, intense personalities in the locker room. But even if Joe Mazzulla's, crazy and spent all summer reading about going back to back, and Pritchard is obsessed with dribbling the ball or whatever it is, like, there is going to be human nature that infiltrates the locker room. And I think you're seeing that. And I think that Porzingis spoke to it. Like, they need to get their killer instinct back. He said last year we were like a lion. This year we're like there's been times where we've looked like a house cat. So that was another funny line. So there was just a lot of openness from the players with us about kind of where things are at and where they need to go and where they need to be. So it was great to hear from him that their confidence is not faltering. From Jaylen, every time I talk to Jaylen in these past few weeks, I'm like, okay, if Jaylen feels this calm, if Jaylen is enjoying the struggle and enjoying all this as much as he says that he is, and I do believe him because he tends to be pretty candid with the media, like, I think people should internalize that to a certain degree and recognize that confidence can waver. Like, I think Derrick White lost a little confidence. He's going to get that back. Jrue Holiday, he has 2 championships. He's been there in so many big moments. He's pulled through. Like, a little bit of a slow start to the season is not going to make me think, okay, Jrue Holiday is like washed. Like, I hear people say that stuff, and it's like, I don't know how people jump to conclusions so quickly when we all know shooting is so variable. So we'll see exactly how things pan out here. But overall, I thought that this was a really good road trip, and just honestly talking to the guys really raised my faith in kind of how things are going. I love using Game Time for all of my ticketing needs. You can use Game Time to buy tickets to Celtics games, any basketball games, at concerts, events, you name it. Game Time has tickets for it right on the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. All you have to do is pick a game, browse the ticket deals, and you can click on Seat View to even see what your view to the court would even look like. There's all-in pricing, so you can kind of toggle this feature, see the total upfront cost, no surprise fees at checkout, and there's a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time also has ticket coverage, so your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. One other side note I wanted to mention, so Jordan Wallace and Baylor Shireman both had their parents in attendance last night. Jordan had like a whole fan section. He's from Dallas, so this was his first time actually playing in an NBA game in Dallas. He was with the team last year, but he did not check into the game. His parents were there, his godparents, his girlfriend. It was like a whole section. He only played the last minute and a half. He missed a 3, but it was still cool just to have him get that experience. And after the game, he was like eating his post-game meal, and Derrick White was like, dude, you have like people waiting for you. Like, I'm going to have to go apologize to them on your behalf because like how late you've been. So they were all kind of making fun of him. He was taking his time eating his post-game meal. Baylor Shireman was with the team. He has been with them for this entire road trip, and he had a really good game versus the Warriors. I mean, it was like garbage time, but he played 4 minutes and scored 5 points and recorded some career highs in his very young career. He's from Nebraska. His family flew in from Nebraska to the game. It was an hour flight. I talked to them a little bit before the game. It was his dad's first time at a Celtics game this season. His mom was at banner night, so he didn't play. I was hoping that they were going to be able to hold on to that double-digit lead because they were up by like 20 in the beginning of the fourth, and then the Mavs made a little bit of a push there, and that's what kind of prevented them from digging deeper into the bench. But thought that it was just nice to meet them. I had never met them before. So it was just two of the youngest guys. They're two early draft picks from the past 2 seasons. Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, both with the team and both with the kind of family in attendance at this game. So something else that just kind of, I always just like to know those little tidbits of kind of who's in the building, what people are going through at various points. Also wanted to note just a couple other like tidbits that Peyton Pritchard and Luke Cornett were both a plus 21 team high. Peyton Pritchard also had a team high 9 rebounds. So his scoring has been a little bit down, but he's been doing a lot of other things. He had 9 assists the game before versus the Clippers. So like he's been doing a lot of different things on the court to stay impactful, even though his shot hasn't been as consistent as it has been in the past. And he's also one of those guys that with Porzingis back in the lineup is going to eat a little bit at some of his shot attempts as well. So at the end of the day, like when guys shoot less, or when there's a new guy in the lineup, those shots are coming from somewhere. So it's great that Porzingis is back. He elevates their defense. He makes them more versatile, dynamic. He makes them a better team. I do believe that. But there is an adjustment period of just figuring out what everybody else is going to do in the meantime. And I think that's why there was a moment there where I was like, maybe Al goes in the starting lineup when you have Porzingis come off the bench, just because that original starting 5 group has been so good together, really so consistent. So all of that being said, I think we'll walk away from this trip thinking they still have a little bit of the same issues. Like the Lakers game was a goose egg. The defense was really lackluster there. Ball movement was tough. It was tough to watch them get so impacted by Lakers defense that hasn't been great this season, although I thought their game plan was really good the other night. But I think more of the positives stand out for me as well. I'll just rattle through. I haven't published an article yet, but I'll just mention a couple things that stuck out just from sitting in those seats. That was so fun. I wish I could have those seats every single game. I understand now why people pay for courtside seats, why it is a priority for people. I wouldn't pay for it, but if I can get a media seat there, I definitely would love it. So one thing I was going to say, just things that stuck out to me that I think you maybe see a little bit from the TV and from wherever you're seated if you're at a game, but it's just different when you have that point of view. Sam Cassell literally does not stop talking. Last year Tatum said he talks more than anybody I've ever met in my life. I see that he's really chatty. I see him talking pregame. He's kind of like the mayor of TD Garden. But this was another level. I was actually pretty stunned to see how much he was chatting it up, yelling from the sidelines, yelling at the referees, talking to the players. There's certain guys that he talks to a lot, like Peyton Pritchard. He's constantly in his ear. So it was funny to watch. And I was right behind him. So I was like, hey, that was just something that stood out that I wasn't quite sure of. He was yelling a lot of defensive commands, yelling to JB to shift or Tatum to go faster in transition. So you can tell as the lead assistant that he's really empowered to impact this team. and he's really empowered to, just be himself, have a large personality. Another thing that really stood out to me in this game, it is so much more of a physical game than you can possibly see on TV. And obviously, I go to games in person. I watch most of these games in person. It's actually rare when I watch a game exclusively on TV. And I usually sit either like in the balcony or in like the loge seating in TD Garden, which is like kind of diagonal, but it's like far away from the actual gameplay. This was the first time that I've sat in those seats. And I watch a lot of G League games from that same angle. And the G League is nowhere near as physical as this. Every time like someone goes to the basket, they're getting hit. So it's just a question of like when you call it. That's why it's tough sometimes when players get mad about a foul call and everybody's like, you go back and you rewind the play and you're like, okay, but you did hit his arm. I understand them a little more now because they're not calling a lot of those plays. A lot of times, arms are being hit and that's it. They're leaving it. They're not blowing their whistle because you would literally have to be calling a foul like every 45 seconds if you were calling any contact. So this question of marginal contact, I don't know. Maybe last night was just a physical game, but it's a little bit less marginal and a little bit more overt than I had realized. A couple times, Jaylen Brown was like bodying Kyrie Irving. I was like, that is definitely a blocking foul. A couple times, Tatum went to the basket and got hit and didn't even react. Like, it wasn't even one of the times where he was asking for a foul. And I was like, okay, I just saw like 3 different guys slap his arm on the way up to the basket. So it's just something that doesn't translate on the television screen. I don't really know why. It did never translate to me before where I was sitting up high. Obviously, I recognize like it's all harder to score than it looks. People are playing harder defense than it looks. But sitting in that spot, I was like, this is a really physical game, and it is not translated to the television. And I need to go make sure that I relay this message to the world because I got really lucky that I got the seat and just go from there because I was pretty stunned, honestly, just to see what that looked like. Other thing I was going to mention that stuck out to me, so this is like my favorite part. I could hear everything Joe was saying during the game when he was yelling out on the court, not when he was like whispering to the coaches, but he's a guy that everybody knows, Mazul Ball. He's an offensive-minded coach. That's what he's known for. He was outwardly prioritizing defense by a million times. On offense, good ball movement, open 3, made 3. He was very neutral, barely reacted. Maybe it would be like, good, yes, like affirming that they executed correctly. But defensively, deflections, steals, hustle plays, diving on the loose balls, offensive rebounds, he was emphatic. He was celebrating them. He was praising players. He was openly expressing how happy he was to see certain plays develop. Not the same on the offensive end. So it's very clear that he is outwardly rewarding defensive plays and hustle over like made shots. And to the media, he doesn't really talk about that. I mean, obviously, if you mention a guy scoring, he'll say he does a lot of other things, but it's very clear that as much as he's known as like an offensive-minded coach, and I think that's been a knock on him in the past, where people don't think that he criticizes defense enough or he prioritizes it enough, especially his first year as a coach. I think that became like a talking point where even players were saying we've lost our defensive identity. It's very clear that this is what he's emphasizing to his team. And I was kind of fascinated watching that develop. Other thing I was going to say, I mean, I always watch the bench, but just like Luke Cornett and Sam Hauser really lead that bench mob. They were on their feet the whole game. At one point, Sam had played only 4 minutes, and it was like midway through the third quarter. And he was like on his feet at every single play. He finally checked into the game, hit a 3 right away. So that was fun to watch. And it just like their energy, like you can tell that they love Derrick. You can tell that they really want Derrick to regain his confidence and to play better. And he was one, like they celebrate for everybody, but you can tell like sometimes there's certain guys that just there's a little bit of an extra attention, extra push, and he was in that position where like whenever he was playing well, the bench was just going crazy. And then the last thing I'll say is just there's a lot more banter in between players than I realized. I know that Jaylen Brown has a relationship with Kyrie Irving that's pretty good. There was one moment where Kyrie threw the ball out of bounds and like hit a kid on the face and he got a bloody nose, and Jaylen was like, what the hell was that pass, Kyrie? Like kind of making fun of him. So it was funny to see. Both him and Derrick were kind of bantering a bit. Derrick, I know I've noticed this on the broadcast and just from my seat that he's always like kind of laughing with opposing players. Jaylen, I haven't noticed it as much, and it might have been more of a Kyrie thing or like he has certain relationships with guys on the Mavs. But it was pretty cool to see. It was pretty fun to just see like how much there is to these guys that you don't really see on the broadcast. Jaylen said it after the Clippers game. He said I'm a lot funnier than people realize. He said it's something that he wishes people knew about him. He said they think because I don't smile when I talk to the media that I'm serious all the time, but I'm a lot funnier than people give me credit for. And I was thinking about that as I was watching this game because I was like, he is kind of joking around a lot. And it was funny. just to see that side of him and the other guys as well. And then, it was funny. Scott Foster was the ref, so I was like watching him do the challenges, and it was fun to be able to tweet out if the challenge was successful before he even said it, because I could hear what they were saying. So I probably will never have those seats again unless I go back to Dallas and win the Steve lottery. I don't know how I ended up there, but it was a really cool experience. I'm writing out in full kind of observations from that perspective, just because whenever I'm granted a good opportunity as a reporter, like being at an NBA Finals game or sitting in a specific spot, I always want to make sure I can like relay what I took away from that with everybody else. I feel like that's my responsibility as a member of the media. So in any case, we're closing out this road trip 3-1. I won't be back. I actually won't be at the Rockets game on Monday. It's like the first game I'm going to miss in like a year. But I'm going to be in Miami covering Unrivaled, the new women's basketball 3-on-3 league. So you can follow along for that coverage. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, You Got Boston podcast. You can also subscribe to CLNS Media. All the press conferences from all the road trip games are posted up there. So if you want to just check out what players are saying, watch it for yourself. Also, the Garden Report, our post-game show, all those episodes are there as well. I'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I'll have another episode probably later this week. I'll be back in Boston, and we'll do some more analysis and coverage. But I appreciate you all following along. Have a good one, and talk to you later.